Welcome to another episode of the Writer's Game podcast, where we help you magnify your voice and monetize your message. Look, we are here with somebody. I'm just going to jump into it. I usually start with a specific set of steps and a specific set of things that I like to say. But when I heard this woman's story, this was last year, it blew my mind. And I had to reach out. I had to bring her on here so you guys could hear from her in real time. Her name is Alisha West. But she is, in my opinion, the epitome of second chances. She shared her story in a way that captivated me and allowed me to be more grateful, allowed me to be more humble, and allowed me, and it sparked me in a way that made me look at my son and love him even more deeply every single day that I look at him and I get a chance to spend that life with him. Yes, she is an author. Yes, she is a luxury realtor out of Tampa, Florida. She's a keynote speaker, abundance coach, and all of those things. But out of all of that, she is a fighter. And she is just an amazing person, amazing human being. And I am just blessed to have her on here. Alisha, how you doing?
Hey, Kyle, I am phenomenal. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And honestly, I'm good to go. Like after that intro, I am good.
Let's go. Let's go. So before we
No,
get
but thank you so
started,
much.
can you just talk to people? Like, can you talk? I know I have so much to say. Before we get started and I just start throwing off questions, can you just introduce yourself? And I guess when you introduce yourself, I want you to answer this one question. What is the moment when your story began?
Oh man. That's a great question. Um, so my name is Alisha West. I am based out of Tampa, Florida. Coined as your favorite realtor, also your abundance coach, the abundance coach. And that is a phenomenal question. If that is the easiest question of the day, I don't know what to say about the rest of them. But no. So I would honestly say that for me, my story began in different phases, really. So initially, it actually starting was at 16 for me, right? But then there was also the beginning of the renewal and the reframing of my mind and my thought process, which just happened a few years ago. And then there is the embracing of my actual story, which started literally last year. So
That's
it really just depends on how you want to go
good.
about it.
So talk to me about all three, right? So because I think somebody really just missed that though, how you broke down your life, because I do think that our life has so many different beginnings of chapters in a sense. So walk me through that 16-year-old moment, walk me through the renewal period, and then walk me through the emotion that sparked the embracing of who you are today.
Oh man. Okay. So let's go with the initial one. And this is primarily the premise of where my opportunities have come from. And believe it or not, this particular story was something that I hated telling because I was so embarrassed by it. But what happened was when I was 16, I was your standard, not so standard 16-year-old. I was a little bit on the rebellious side, didn't really like to listen. And there was an instance of where me and my parents were arguing. I had left the house and then I came back. And like I said, me and my parents were not on the best of terms, but I came back in. My mom was kind of upset. There was a lot on her plate. And she said to me, "Is this how you treat me when I took you in?"
Mm,
And I was like, what do you mean took me in? When you hear that type of phrase, you usually think of like animals, like, oh yeah, I took in that puppy because it was cute, right? And I was like, what do you mean? And she says, you're not our child. Like, you're not our actual daughter. You were adopted.
mm.
And it took me back because obviously I'm 16 years old. I have this understanding up until that moment of what the family dynamic is, like who I am as a person. And then in that moment, all at once, it's almost as if the carpet was pulled from under me. And I initially thought it was just a lie. And I was like, okay, I don't know if you're upset. And, people say things to hurt people when they're mad. And I kind of initially was a little bit more in disbelief. And I was like, well, that's like, this just can't be true. And then we went into a further discussion of how, I was at that time at 16, I was told that I was adopted for $200. And then later on in life, I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense because you can't adopt a good purebred puppy for $200. So I came to understand that it was more of a sold situation. And it took a long, long time for me to then transition out of that mindset, because after I heard it initially, it caused me to believe that like I was unwanted, that there was already a price on me as a person, right? And then there was the justification for me in regards to, well, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody be in a position to give away their child?
Mm.
Right. And there was a lot of just confusion. And that carried with me for that stayed with me for years, even transitioning into relationships. I remember always being deemed as like one of the hardest working people in the room. And as you get older, you start to reflect. And I realized that one of the reasons why I was always the hardest worker wasn't because I just loved everything that I did, but because I associated the idea of being fired with being told that I wasn't wanted.
That's good. That's good.
So
Well,
yeah.
there's so much unpacked. And it's beautiful because how much passion, and you can smile and talk about it now, shows you did the work, you dealt with it, and now it's not continuing to overshadow who you are as this beautiful person that you've grown to be today. Talk to me about that moment, that shift, right? Because, and obviously I talk about stories all the time, and I ask every guest this, and I say, at the beginning of a story, it's the setting, and then there's a rise to the climax, and then after the climax it's a descend, and then it's the conclusion. But the climax is, in my opinion, the most important part of a story, because it shows the turning point and that transition, that breaking or crushing period. Walk me through, after that moment, what was the climax that began your renewal period?
Oh man. So there was a thing of where I finally just made a decision to start changing what I was listening to.
Oh,
There was a moment of where I started questioning, like, okay, is listening to music all the time really doing me a service? And I started to transition into like listening to podcasts.
okay.
Good job, guys. And, like listening to motivationals. And I remember I ran across a podcast because I had been running into consistent relationship problems of where I felt like I was attracting people that were giving me that reassurance of not being wanted. At least that's what I was telling my subconscious. And as we know, when you tell your subconscious something, it just goes. And essentially, you will manifest those things into your life, and it will reassure you of whatever story you're telling yourself. And I got to a point of where I began to question, like, is it everybody else or is it me?
Mm.
And at that moment, I decided, okay, there's something going on here. I really do need to reflect. And at that moment where I made the decision to no longer blame everybody else and say, you're going to do it because everybody else did it, I
Exactly.
made the decision to look at myself and say, Alisha, the reason why you're seeing these results is because this is the result that you have embedded in your mind.
That's good.
And only I can change it.
What were the resources, whether it was a book, whether it was a coach, like what was the resource that helped you make this transition or this leap?
So I love that you asked that question, because it was an app.
Ah,
And I give this app away. I talk to everyone about this app. It's called Pep Talk Motivation.
okay.
It's PEPTALK
Gotcha.
Motivation. And it literally just has a plethora of just motivational speakers, podcasts. And I made the intention to say, like, you know what, I'm going to listen to something positive rather than listening to music all the time.
Love that.
And I started to listen to this, and it rolled into like the Les Browns and the Dr. Miles Monroes. And then it just like kept going. And I was like, oh, wow, like this stuff is good. And it seems like everyone has a story. And
Good.
one of the things that all your most successful individuals in this world do is stop and reflect on themselves and decide that they are the ultimate reason why they are living the life that they are living.
Alisha, what was, as you think about all of these different things that you learned as a part of your journey, What's been one of the most powerful lessons that life has taught you thus far?
That regardless of the cards that you were dealt, at the end of the day, nothing happens to you, it happens for you.
And what was something that happened to you that you recognized later on in life that, wow, this really just happened for me?
Honestly, being like having the information about me not biologically belonging to my parents,
Mm.
I feel happened for me because as a result of that, going through the emotional downfall that I went through because of hearing it, and then now transitioning into where I am now, is more so an opportunity for me to show others, like, hey, yes, things can happen in our lives. And in that moment, we might question it, it might hurt. But at the end of the day, it's still a part of your story.
Mm.
And being able to have that story and come out victorious on the other side, you are then able to be an inspiration to somebody else.
Exactly. I know that as we're growing to become this inspiration, this successful individual, there's a pain associated with this journey of becoming, and oftentimes that pain looks like suffering. Hence,
Hmm.
the book From Unknown to Unstoppable: How to Turn Your Suffering into a Success. What's one key that you would give someone to navigate that suffering so that they can be able to be successful?
To understand that it's never about you.
Mm.
No matter what you're going through in that moment, it can feel as personal as it wants to be. And
Mm.
oftentimes it does. But I often tell people, like, imagine that you're having to go through this so that way somebody younger than you can come to you with the scenario and tell you that they're ready to give up and they don't know how to get through it. But because you have already come out victorious over that particular scenario, you're now able to be a mentor to this individual.
That's good. That's good. What is one thing that you've been mentored on that you recognize that you had to unlearn as a child growing up?
Honestly, so I would say that this has been one of my biggest lessons came from a financial aspect.
Interesting.
Yes. So growing up, my dad was military and then my mom didn't work. So there was almost a scarcity mindset in the household. And I believed in limitation, right? I believed in the everybody has to get a piece of their pie rather than everybody being able to sow their own harvest.
Mm.
And it's now been like honestly just a year of understanding that the things that we desire and the things that we want do come from God. And
Okay.
it's oftentimes not really on us by ourselves to go out and get them, but to trust that if we put ourselves in the position to take action and then believe that we're going about it the right way, like the success will always come to you.
Of course. You know, Alicia, you've been through a lot of different challenges, a lot of different experiences in life, great and, negative. Who are you now? How would you define who you are now?
That is a great question. I would honestly say that I am now the woman who goes through life intentionally looking to be a blessing to others
Mm.
in whatever way I can be.
Out of all of the titles that you hold, you got a lot going on. What would you say out of personal and professional titles, which title are you most proud to share with the world?
Being a mother,
Okay. And you have a son or a daughter?
a son.
When you look at your son, and I want us to put us in that moment. Today is your last day, and
Hmm.
your son is facing you right now. 30 seconds. What would you have to say to him? And this is the last message that he would be able to hear from you.
Whew, this is
Mm.
that's a deep one. To when everything is said and done, to understand that you are not here for yourself, that you are here to be of service to everyone around you, that there are no mistakes, that you should look at every person that you walk into and just be grateful for them. And that would pretty much be it. Just to live your life in a way to always be intentional about being of service.
That's beautiful. It's always dope having parents on here, because I think one of the things that you continue to say is it's not about you. The things that we're building, the things that we're creating is about that next generation. But oftentimes, and we talked about this in church last weekend, when, it's in Deuteronomy 5:9, and it talks about how the sins of our fathers, or the sins of our predecessors, sometimes create the chaos in our lives in the third and fourth generations. So
Absolutely.
I bring that up to ask this question: what is one past mistake that you have made that you're working actively to not recreate in your son's life?
Believing that. That's a great question. To not recreate in my son's life. So when I grew up, I didn't know, we didn't speak about feelings, right? So emotions weren't really expressed. That wasn't something that was necessarily embraced. And being in this place now, and even still to this day, I can oftentimes find myself getting into a situation of where, like, I might feel triggered and I don't like to speak.
That's good.
And I will go mute and I will completely cut communication. So for my son, even when he's upset, I try to really let him know, like, hey, you still have to speak. You still have to utilize your voice and be able to communicate through those feelings, because that's the only way you can actually keep your power.
Talk to me about the importance and the power that your book has now created for you to be able to now have a platform to use your voice in the way that you want.
So, I was super, like, nervous about actually putting my story out there and actually seeing it, yes, like, on paper, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, somebody's gonna read it, like, this
For
is
sure.
crazy. And getting on stage the first time, and speaking it and hearing me say the words and hearing me going through the emotions, I cried. Like, I cried because I was like, oh my goodness, like, I was going through so much. And then also, hindsight is always 2020. So being able to reflect and see those things. But now it's just a means of healing and letting it be known that, like, I am able to put my story on these pages, that somebody who is in a position to where they're ready to give up can read it and be inspired and understand that, like, there is always hope and it's never over unless you decide it's over.
That's good. I was given a speech a few weeks ago, and one of the things that I said is either we're running towards something or we're running from something.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say that in this season you're doing?
I would say I'm definitely running towards, and I've been saying this, like, running towards opportunity to be of service.
Okay.
Like, that is it. This is just the season of yes. In every capacity, to just sit here and say, like, yes, absolutely, I will tell my story. Like, yes, absolutely, I will speak to these children. Like, yes, I'm just here for it. So I think that it's now being able to embrace the thing that I thought for so long was a negative is this beautiful thing for me to be able to tell everyone and say, like, hey, yes, I have this smile that everyone sees, but beneath that smile, I had to grow as a person and do that shadow work and understand that just because I went through that situation, it didn't define who I was, and you're still able to write whatever chapter you want to write in your life.
How would you define this chapter that you're writing in your life? If you were to give this season of your life a title, what would it be?
Unstoppable.
Oh, I like it. I mean, hence
Yes.
I think,
Unstoppable.
why is that? Talk to me.
There is a beautiful power that you end up embracing when you realize that you are in control, regardless of what is happening to you externally.
Mm.
And it's amazing because I know that whether something happens with my car or something happens financially, like it doesn't affect my source. And
Mm.
because I've been there before and I've done it before, I can do it again. And when you walk through life with that mindset of understanding, like, hey, you had it before, you can do it again. And now you have experience, and now you can just create something that's even better. It's just exciting.
No, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. And, you know, I say this all the time, but it's easier said than done, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Walk me through, like, the person that's listening right now and they're like, she sound good, but how do I do this? Walk
Oh,
them through that process of how they get to that point.
I'm here for it. So, and this is actually something that I tell my mentees and the individuals that are in my programs. One of the first things you have to do is, one, identify that you are so powerful. And you do that by realizing that you are able to look at things in the perspective that you want to,
Mm.
whether that's negative or positive. So the realization of choice is already your superpower. And then number two, being intentional about being grateful for everything you have. So I tell all of my clients to get a gratitude journal and write in your gratitude journal every single morning and write out the things that are working for you. And what I realized when I first started doing it was there's so many amazing things that are happening to us on a daily, but we overlook them for that one negative thing that may have happened to us. But the way the gratitude journal works out is when you start your day off in gratitude and you're already writing out all these great things and blessings that you have in your life, when that negative thing comes to you, you're like, okay, so what? I already wrote out all these phenomenal things that are happening in my life, and it allows you the power to sit here and say, I'm going to choose to focus on the outcome that I desire.
Mm.
So honestly, those two things right there,
That's
that'll
it.
get you right.
That's it. We're done, y'all. We're done. No, I think those things are super powerful. Having this spirit of gratitude has changed my life, truly. Because I think so often we get so bogged down with what's going on in the
Yeah.
moment, where we really then extend that moment to, oh, I'm having a bad day. No, you had like somebody cut you
You
off.
had a bad moment, right?
And then we just like let it just kill our days and weeks and
Mhm.
our productivity. It's the craziest thing. And every time I feel myself a little off, I just, what am I grateful for? Like, what do I have? And I
Yes.
think you're so spot on. I'm going to change it up a little bit. I want to know something. And oftentimes we are so focused on building
Mhm.
that we don't know or take time to reflect on the purpose.
Mhm.
Why do you believe you're still here?
I honestly believe that I am still here because I have more people to come in contact with to be an impact to.
That's good.
That's it.
That's good. And with these people that you would come back or come in contact with, what would you want them to gain from you before it's your time?
To embrace the fact that that desire that you have in your heart is there for a reason. And in order to move closer to that desire and get to the point to be able to even have it in your hands, it has to be you against you.
Mm,
And you have to choose to break all those barriers that you place upon yourself prior to getting to this point.
that's good. How do we even identify that we have barriers in front of where we're trying to go?
Ask yourself if you're actually happy with everything that you have. Like if this is your final step, like if somebody told you and said, draw out your dream life on a paper, if that piece of paper looks any different than the life that you are living right now, you need to do some reflecting.
100%, 100%, 100%. I want to know this. When is the last? Somebody asked me this years ago. I've been wanting to ask somebody this. Never had the chance.
Great. I'll take it.
Perfect time, right? When was the last time that life left you speechless?
Less than 24 hours ago.
Oh, talk to me about it. Let's go. Let's go.
Literally, when this is, and mind you, this is my first book. Like, this is my first actual book. And I remember this time last year seeing these authors and just kind of understanding and hearing, like, oh, they're a best-selling author, they're a best-selling author, their book was a #1 seller. And I would always be like, wow, that's amazing. And then literally within 24 hours from my book going live, I had made best-selling author and had a best-selling book. And I was like, oh, I see.
Now, talk to me about what that did for you, though.
It was a solid reminder that people will invest in you when they see the value in you. And it was also another reminder that the thoughts that I had from the origin of the story aren't true. And they still continue to not be true to this day.
That's good. Alisha, what are the parts of your story? Because, you know, you're an author now, you're speaking on stages, you're doing all of these different things. What are the parts of your story that you wish you shared more and that people don't ask about enough?
You know, honestly, I would say that I feel as though I want people to understand that initially when they hear my story, it's very, very easy for someone to immediately get upset and say, well, why would somebody buy a child? Why would somebody give a child away? Like, what kind of parent, especially in today's society, like people look to take offense to everything. And I really want people to understand that I see this as the biggest blessing, and I come from a complete place of peace to where I said, I had those same questions of like, well, why would somebody do that? And I now look at it as, well, what if that was their only choice? And understanding that it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't ordained. Right? And for my mom, who actually did take me in, I can't help but to be grateful, because how many children were taken from a parent, put into a foster system, and then adopted by somebody, and they're still not here because they walked into a place of negligence.
Of course.
So I think that that's something that I really, if I have it like my way, I want that to be an explanation that people really do have and understand of like, there's no reason for you to like be upset or think like, oh my goodness, like people were mistreating her. I'm like, no, it's not a means of mistreatment. It was just, this was something that had to happen in order for me to get here.
That's
And I'm grateful for each and everything that happened. So yeah.
It was like your launching pad, you know.
Yes.
Without going there, you wouldn't been able to launch to where you are today. That's
exactly. I joke around and I say my parents were early investors.
No, literally. That's you know, it's just so cool seeing you know, because I think this concept of I don't look like where I've been through, or I don't look like I've been through is just it's so cool, because when I saw you speak on stage, it's like, all right, you know, she's really dropping it. And then at the end, I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like, and I really feel like that moment, because we were getting ready to leave and head back to Charlotte and do our thing. And then you were like, y'all gotta stay. Y'all gotta stay. It's like, she better be good then, you know? And
no
when
pressure.
I was like, when you said that and when you went through it, I was like, God needed me to hear that. And it's literally shifted the whole perspective and how I view so many different things. So I just want to honor you and give you your flowers there for sure. All right, we do this activity on here all the time. And I'm going to take you through rapid fire exercise. Okay. And I'm going to say a word, and then you have to just say what's the first thing that comes to your head. Okay?
Okay.
All right, we're going to start with something easy, something crazy. Barney.
Purple.
All right, let's do faith.
Everything.
Meaning.
Life.
Parenting.
Love.
Love.
Forgiveness.
I'm gonna stop there because I got a question. How would you help someone that was where you were as that 16-year-old broken girl that just found out that news? Talk to the person right now that is still at that 16-year-old place, even in their 20s and 30s and 40s, because they did not know how to forgive.
I know what it's like to feel this pain. I know what it's like to wonder why. And I know what it's like to say, what's the point? But there's somebody waiting for you on the other side of this that needs you. And if you don't get through this moment, you will never be able to save their life.
There it is. There it is. If you could only accomplish one more thing in life, what would you want? Like anything that you would want, what would it be?
Like, you gotta be specific, because I'm gonna turn around and say, like, building generational wealth for my son.
All right. Forgot I was talking to an overachiever, you know? No, really, if you could, have anything that you want, anything, and it was granted to you today, all you had to do is ask for it, what would it be? And what would that look like?
That my son embraces the same mindset that I have at this point.
Oh, what would be his first step?
The realization, and I'm looking at him right now, the realization of his his mindset, like literally his decision making, and the power of reframing.
Alisha, this has been literally phenomenal. I didn't expect anything less. I knew you were going to deliver 110%. Tell us how we can find your book, where we can find you, and how we can support your amazing journey.
Yes. So, you guys, oh my God, you can find my book on Amazon, right? It is titled From Unknown to Unstoppable by Alisha West. You'll see my whole face on the book. And then on Instagram, my handle is at Alisha West Speaks, Facebook, Alisha West. And yeah, if any of you see me out in the street, please do not hesitate to speak, because I literally will stop everything that I'm doing and hold a whole conversation with you.
I got a question. I got to ask. It really just came over me. So I think somebody right now, and I feel it, and it's so crazy because we're in the studio talking about this, and this isn't going to air until a little bit. But somebody right now has listened through this whole interview and is still doubtful, wants to make that big jump, wants to make that big leap, but there's something in the way of their transformation. There's something in the way of them starting that realty company, or them speaking on stage, or them writing their book. There's something in the way. What would you say to that person right now?
How are you going to feel when it works out?
That's all she needs.
And that's literally what we do, right? We get
my man. I was waiting for him. Come on in. So she has said so much about you throughout this whole time. I feel like everybody in the world has heard just the amazing things about you. Can you share 60 seconds of what it means to be the son of such an amazing mom? Or what if you had 60 seconds to share anything with the world, what would you say?
I'll just listen to my mom, be nice to her, do what she says.
All right, y'all practice that one.
Burberry.
That's beautiful though. That's like this moment right here. Like my son's downstairs, and like those moments right here, I can never get enough of. And those are the most meaningful moments. I think so many things that we do as influencers or entrepreneurs it's so scripted. It has to be the perfect camera. All right, stay outside and all of these different things. But it's those moments right there, if anybody's watching, that means the most to the most, like talk to me, I got one more question. For you.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
How do your ancestors feel now that they see you?
Hopeful.
Talk a little bit more about it.
Because they know that I have done the work on myself, done the forgiving, and am in a place of where I am literally relentless about impacting and inspiring as many people as I possibly can. And in the process of that, healings and breakthroughs are going to happen.
There it is. This has been an absolutely phenomenal show, an absolutely phenomenal person. Anybody listening right now, I need you to go buy not just one copy, but 5 copies of this book. Go to Amazon. I'm going to teach you, Alisha, offline how to get it on Target, Walmart, Barnes & Nobles, and books.
Hey, let's go.
I'm not going to give it to y'all on live. Y'all got to pay for that.
Hey, I know that's right.
Well, yes, I'm going to talk to you about it because like literally your story needs to be shared with the world, truly. And I'm just so proud of your transformation and how you're leveraging not only your story, but your presence, your poise, and just continuing to show up for the world to be able to change the world that we see today. I know every day your son is proud of the mother that you have become, the person that you have become. And I definitely know the ancestors are proud and hopeful of the journey that's still in front of you. Guys, if you have not yet, subscribe, and share this podcast with at least 10 people. And I want you to click the links in the description so that you can access her book, access her Instagram, so that you can be able to support her. We are here with another episode of the Writer's Game podcast, where we help you magnify your voice just like Alisha has done, and monetize your message. We'll see you guys next episode.